Excuse me?
Yes, sir?
Say, what's that tape you're playing?
What's up, posers, and welcome to the Guest List. I'm your host, Justin Hensley, and this is the show where I invite guests on to make lists. You are listening to the second episode of this solo side project that I have going on, and I appreciate the feedback that I got from the first episode. It was really great to hear from everyone. Some of those posts on social media did really well. Now, if I could translate some of those social media clicks into downloads, that would be even better. But I appreciate each and every one of you who shared it, who liked it, who listened to it, any of that kind of stuff, gave me feedback. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate each and every one of you. For our second episode, we are joined by Tim PopKid. He is one of the co-operators of PopKid Records. Tim also hosts the blog I Buy Way Too Many Records, as well as co-hosts the podcast/live stream Perfectly Excellent. And you will hear all about those shows and blogs and record labels in the show. This is a really fun conversation, and I tasked Tim with the prompt of selecting his favorite obscure / deep cuts / lesser known artists. And he came up with some really good ones. You know, when he sent me the list initially, I didn't know who most of them were. So I was very excited to dig into all of this, and I wound up enjoying quite a bit of it. There's one in particular I didn't like, which I'll talk about on the show. So I'm not saying something in the intro that I don't actually tell Tim myself directly. But yeah, I love these picks. The episode went so well. I definitely want to get Tim back on to talk about rap and maybe some other categories in the future. Tim was an excellent guest. He's got a history in radio, so, it makes talking on a mic a little easier. But this is an excellent episode. I had so much fun doing it. And I hope you enjoy the show as well. Would love to hear more feedback on this episode. Let me know what you think. Let me know if any of the artists that he picked for us to talk about were something that you were already a fan of or you wound up really enjoying after checking it out. I'm always curious to see what these lists create for our listeners. Does this motivate you to try out some new stuff? Or do you go, this guy doesn't even know what he's talking about? I'd love to hear back from all of you, though. So without further ado, let's dive into this conversation with Tim PopKid. I hope you hate it. I am here with Tim PopKid, and he runs the record label PopKid Records, as well as the blog I Buy Way Too Many Records, and co-hosts the podcast Perfectly Excellent. So Tim, welcome to the show.
Thanks. I can only say I co-run PopKid Records. Don't give me too much credit.
Oh, yes. I co-host this podcast, so I can't take all the all the praise for that one either. Or punishment, but...
Blame. I think blame is the word you're looking for. Yeah.
So I was trying to remember when the first time I came across you. I want to say I saw a post on Twitter from you, because I definitely remember your avatar. I think it's the same avatar on Twitter that you have on Blue Sky. So I think that's how I came across you first. But then also, friend of the show, regular listener, patron, Zach in Oregon, he told me that he knew you, and he was actually his introduction to the band Him Kerosene, which we did a whole episode on, because he sponsored the episode. So, yeah, you're 2 steps away. You're 2 steps away from Kevin Bacon, or however that that game goes. But
I'm many degrees from Kevin Bacon, but I think I'm 0 degrees from Zach, because I think since there's no one in between us, I don't think there are degrees there. I think it's just
right.
I
guess
Zach.
you're 1 degree away from me.
Yeah.
through
yeah.
Zach. So yeah,
That's accurate. The math checks out for that.
yeah. So, we try and get kind of an idea of where you're from and your background and all that fun stuff. So, my first question will be, where are you from? Where did you grow up?
Well, I am very proudly from New Jersey. I grew up in Sussex County, New Jersey, which if New Jersey is the profile of Abraham Lincoln, I'm up in his forehead. So I grew up in the northwestern part of New Jersey, kind of up in the mountains, which was you'd be surprised how few people can be in certain parts of New Jersey. So I grew up in a pretty small town as far as New Jersey goes. Maybe not in comparison to some folks who don't live in a reasonably populous state like that. But for New Jersey, I grew up in a pretty small place.
So yours is considered there's a podcast I listen to where the host is from New Jersey, and he says that there's suburb of New York, New Jersey, and suburb of Philadelphia, New Jersey. So you're probably closer to the New York side then if you're on the forehead there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm closer to New York than Philadelphia as the crow flies, but it's not close really to any of those things. And
Right.
these days, the amount of hassle it takes to get into New York, if I were to go to a show or something like that, I actually usually go to Philly because it takes me less time to get there, even though it's further geographically from me.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. Just ease is definitely a way to determine which way you're going. What I like to ask people in the show is, when did you first become, I haven't really quite figured out how to describe what this is, but when did you first develop like a really strong interest in music?
I don't know. It's always been there. But it's one of those things where, like, I can trace it back, like, really, really, really young. But how passionate can you really be about something when you're 3 in comparison to when you're, say, 20? So my love of music, the big bang for my love of music is the Blues Brothers. The Blues Brothers album, Briefcase Full of Blues, is a record that my parents got me when I was, like, 2 or 3 years old. I love that record so much. It's been such an influence over the years. The movie is the only favorite movie I've ever had in my whole entire life. My mom took me to see it when I was 4. I don't remember that, but it's been the only movie I've ever really... It's been the only movie that's been my favorite. But my love of music directly stems from listening to the Blues Brothers when I was a kid. And then it just sort of gradually got more and more intense as the years went on. And like I discovered like the next thing that I got really super crazy passionate about, and then the next thing that I got really crazy super passionate about. So I could probably chop that up any way you like. If you want to know about punk rock, I could tell you about that. If you want to know about what became before punk rock, I can tell you about that. If you don't want to know anything, that's fine too, because why would you?
No, I think it's really interesting to see where people come from and how they get to where they are, and how they get to have this disease that we all have, where we are just obsessed with music and want to talk about it, write about it, put it out on record, you know.
Well, you can mostly blame Dan Aykroyd for me.
So you didn't get into conspiracy theories and Crystal Skull vodka and all that kind of stuff like Dan Aykroyd.
No. But his other movies are pretty solid too. Like I don't know too many Dan Aykroyd movies that I don't like, aside from Nothing But Trouble, because that's atrocious.
Oh yeah, that's the one I was thinking. I was like,
movie.
ooh, that's the scary movie. That's not a horror movie, but it's horrifying to watch. When do you think you kind of got into punk rock, or at least punk, DIY, indie, whatever you want to call it?
All right, so I was a very late bloomer when it came to that sort of thing, because the first modern music that really connected with me, like, you know, I don't want to say like grown-up music, but things that weren't the Blues Brothers or Weird Al Yankovic or something like that, was hip-hop. Hip-hop is what really hit me first. 1990, LL Cool J, Mama Said Knock You Out. That basically set my path for like the next 4 years, where I really got to kind of live through that awesome golden era of the early 90s hip-hop scene. So that was all I cared about. I didn't care about anything else that was going on. All of the rock stuff, the alternative stuff, the Nirvana stuff, that I was aware of it, but not anything I was super interested in. But what happened in 1994 is the sound of hip-hop started to change dramatically. And I was having a more and more difficult time finding albums that had the sound that I really wanted to listen to, because especially as far as like production goes, the production of hip hop it was really just changing very, very drastically at that time. So I was kind of bummed about it. And I was driving to the mall with my friend Scott. Scott had a Plymouth Sundance, and we were driving down to the Rockaway Mall, and he goes, "Tim, want you to listen to this album. I'm going to put this album on. You like the Beastie Boys, so I think you might like some of this." And he put on the Beck record, Mellow Gold. And while I did like the couple of songs on there that did sound like the Beastie Boys, like I was completely blown away by that album. I had never heard anything like that. Someone with lyrics just so completely out there. Like, I'm kind of an odd guy. I certainly wasn't, the typical person who you would think would be into the hip hop that I was at the time. Because, I'm just kind of a weirdo. But here was this guy with just these lyrics that were just out of this world, just like rhyming about just the craziest things, and like such a diverse album that just went from one thing to the next thing to the next thing, like just genre hopping all over the place with such a good sense of humor, but not in like a jokey, like Weird Al kind of way. I found it more subversive than that. And it just blew my mind and just blew the doors wide open for me. And just finding out that he was also doing a lot of independent stuff that wasn't a part of Geffen, that was just a world that I just wasn't really even aware that it existed. But, you talk about when did you become really, really passionate about music. That's another one of those key markers for me, is that record and Beck just made, I wanted to know everything about him. And this is 1994. I didn't have the internet or anything like that. So, I just tried to find as much stuff. I found out that he had independent albums. I bought those albums. I found out there were people who worked on those independent albums with him. And I just sort of started digging around that kind of stuff. So, I didn't really start I kind of started with a lot of the indie rock stuff, like the K Records, Kill Rock Stars, kind of stuff, like Link, Unwound, Carp, Godhead Silo, like that kind of stuff. And then, John Spencer Blues Explosion, like anything that was like directly connected to Beck, I immediately started checking that stuff out. And it just sort of blossomed from there. And I kept digging in more and more. I got involved in like the punk scene that was kind of based around this record store in Pompton Lakes, New Jersey, called Flipside, which is where my friend Alan works. That's where I met him. He worked there. And like I started going to like some of the punk shows and things like that. Like for example, I didn't go to my first concert until Lollapalooza 1995. That was the first concert I ever went to, and I was 18 years old. So I know that 18 is not old, but when all of like the other punks and everything have been doing it since they were 13, I did definitely feel like I was a late bloomer coming into it. I feel like I'm rambling now.
No,
I don't even remember what the
not
question was.
I was just trying to figure out where we got into punk and independent. So I could see where Beck is a good gateway for that kind of thing, because you're right, he kind of bridges that gap of like some rap to indie, I guess is what you could consider what some of his music was. I was curious what was on. A lot
of folk stuff on there too.
That's true. I was curious which record what singles were on Mellow Gold, and I saw that's the
Mellow Gold was Loser, Beer Can, and Pay No Mind were the singles from that album. But again, in 1994, he had two other albums came out. He had One Foot in the Grave on K Records, and he had Stereopathetic Soul Manure on Flipside Records, no relation to the record store I was just talking about. So he was just dumping stuff in 1994. Like every time you turned around, there was just another Beck record floating around, and I just kept consuming.
Yeah. Yeah, those connections, those are like probably the most important thing about developing your taste. Like looking in and seeing like, okay, who played on this record? Well, that's cool. I didn't know any. Let's find out more about this guy. Or what label did it come out on? What else did they put out? What else is interesting? So those are essential, I think.
I could talk for hours about compilations, especially back then. So we'll skip that for now, though. That's another episode.
I do love a comp. I have a little Patreon series called The Comps That Made Us, and I just talk about compilations that I had that, left a lasting impact on me, because they're kind of a lost art at this point. Like they were so instrumental for finding new music for a lot of people back then, pre-internet especially.
Yeah.
So, okay, that kind of gives me a good idea of where you are and where you got connected to it. So, let's see, where do we want to go? I think we kind of navigated or planned out where we want to go question-wise. So, let's move over to the blog. So, I Buy Way Too Many Records. As far as I could tell, it goes back to 2011. At least that's as far back as the blog itself goes.
That's as far back as the website goes. I was sort of writing a little bit about some records and taking pictures of them on Flickr before then. Wow. And then in 2011, I was just like, I don't really have a good place to put like my year end, like what are my favorite records this year. So I just sort of bought that domain and just started dumping stuff there. So the fact that that thing's been going on for almost 15 years is staggering to me. I have no idea why I keep doing that. I'm just a complete glutton for punishment.
It is funny that the desire to have somewhere to put a list is a lot of times the reason why blogs and like newsletters and things like that pop off. So it is funny. There's something about people like us who are just like, I got to make a list of something. You know, I got to put together my favorites.
It really just kind of started out with me just taking pictures of records because I got a camera and I just was like, I'll just take pictures of my records because I get a lot. I buy way too many records.com. And, it just started turning into like, well, I got a little bit more to say about this one. Like if you go back to some of the really old things on there, there's like a paragraph about stuff. And then like I just started writing more like reviews because that's sort of all what I did. In high school, I wrote for my college paper. I'm sorry, my high school newspaper. In college, I wrote for my college newspaper doing album reviews and stuff like that. And then, you know, I worked at my college radio station as well. But like I've been writing reviews, you know, since I was an early teenager. So I just sort of fell back into it because I'm not good at it, but it's just something that I enjoy doing. And I like the idea of being able to tell people about some music that they might not have heard just because like I just care so much about it. It's one of the reasons why, you know, I came on. It's like, ooh, I can talk about a handful of bands that maybe some people haven't heard of. Sign me up. Game on.
Yeah, there is this desire to be like, I want to share these things that I think are awesome. Like I want people to hear this stuff too. And it's important. I think it's really important, especially for the artists, you know, to have someone championing them or, you know,
it defined like the first like 30 years of my life because, you know, again, I wrote album reviews and stuff like that for my high school newspaper. Then I went to college. I wrote for my college newspaper. Then like my college radio station changed formats, my junior year. So it went from like a training ground for DJs doing like an adult contemporary, like real radio station. Like then that faculty advisor left and the new one just wanted it to be like a normal college station. So I came in there doing a radio show. And then I ended up being the music director of the radio station, like really kind of just like, oh, okay, now I can have the DJs learn more about it and then they can teach people. And then from there, I got a job working in the music industry where I did radio promotion for like 8 years. So then I was talking to other music directors, telling them about stuff that they could then tell their DJs that they could then tell their listeners to. So that's kind of what I've always just wanted to do until I hit about 30. And then I'm just like, I'm exhausted. I can't do this anymore. The music industry is I got a lot of good out of the music industry, but I don't look back fondly on a large portion of it because it was just very tiring and very minimal reward other than just sort of like feeling like you sort of did good by some bands. And then also not at all doing good by other bands because, you know, you have to kind of just work what's in front of you, not necessarily only things you like.
Yeah. Yeah. A friend of the show, Dave Brown, he writes the newsletter Oklahoma Lefty. He's been blogging for a really long time, too. Maybe even as far back as you, as far as like...
It's not a contest.
Well, you know, I stacked up your blogs and I said, all right, who has more posts? And no. But one of the things he's told me is he went to school for radio at some point, and then whenever he first got his first chance to go into a station and like see how everything works, someone working there told him like, it's like, if you love music, don't go into the radio business because it's not about actually the music. It's like, I understand what that means, but I could see how something like that would hit you.
I'm gonna butcher what I believe is a Steve Albini quote, and it is something to the effect of going into the music industry because you love music is like getting a job at a slaughterhouse because you love animals. That is, I think I read that quote maybe like last week. That is
That's a pretty good example.
I hope I didn't butcher the quote.
I think you got it pretty close, like as far as the idea is there. So yeah, it's strange because you'd think like, I'm working in music. I'm working in the music industry. I will be, talking about music and listening to music all day long. And it's like, you might be. But
you might
really
be, and then you might end up on phone calls all day long trying to convince people why Le Tigre is a fun band to listen to. Which, nothing against Le Tigre, and like Bikini Kill, rad, but Le Tigre was not for me. And I think that was one of those bands that I was kind of like, you know what? I think I'm getting too old for this. Like the stuff that's connecting with the people I'm talking to is just not the same sort of stuff that I'm listening to.
I can see, trying to pitch something that you're not necessarily as thrilled with makes it tough.
Le Tigre's not really a good answer because I understand the point of Le Tigre, even though it's not for me. But it was a lot of some of like the major label stuff that we had to work where it was just like, it just seemed so vapid, a lot of it. I was ending up working bands like, like Wolf Mother and like The Coral and just stuff that just, Kasabian, like that kind of stuff, like the stuff that pays the bills, not the stuff that, I care about.
Yeah. I haven't thought about Wolf Mother in a minute.
Lucky you.
They haunt your dreams? Well, I think you answered all my writing questions that I had about the blog. I noticed, you're still putting stuff out on the blog. So if you want to check out the blog, there's a lot of really fun stuff there. I did want to say that I appreciate your writing style because I'm always interested in someone who writes personally. Like they talk about their feelings and their actual like experience with things instead of just here's the press kit, here's the, Wikipedia entry on the record. Like I prefer to know why you like it, not why, it sold this many copies. I'm not so much worried about that kind of stuff because you can find that any other way,
Yeah, I mean, there's only so many ways to say a band sounds like this, and I always try to write the way that I talk, because I don't like reading things where I can't really ascertain what the writer's voice is. Especially when it comes to reviews, like a lot of people, they recycle press clips, and they just sort of write what I think you're supposed to write. Like, I wrote a little bit like that when I was in college, when I was like, okay, well, if I'm going to do writing as a job, like I need to learn how to write like a grown up. And then I realized that like, I don't like writing like that. And I don't like reading stuff like that. So, I mean, especially because of how my taste in music has, I don't know if it's changed. Maybe it's stagnated is the better word. But I do tend to write a lot about older records and reissues. They're all stuff that I recently buy, but I buy a lot of older records. I buy a lot of reissues. And some of these things, especially records that I've had on CD for a really long time that are coming out on vinyl for the first time, I do write a lot about like what was going on when that record came out and like why, like the stories that I have surrounding some of those records. To me, it's just more interesting to write that way. I have no idea if anybody else cares, but that's the kind of stuff I like reading, and that's my voice, for better or worse. Apologies in advance.
That is how I try and write as well. I mean, occasionally you do have to throw in some things like they're from here, they're inspired by this. There's certain things you do need to throw in there so that the reader has some context of what's going on, especially if you don't have clips or like, links to stream stuff. So you need a little bit of it, but really the bulk of it should be like, what does it mean to you, the writer, and not just what you think people want to hear.
Yeah. I do my best, which isn't good enough, but I try.
I enjoy it. I enjoy it quite a bit. So, before we get into the label stuff, you do have how do you describe it? It's a YouTube show. It's kind of a podcast. It's kind of a live stream. How do you describe the show? Perfectly Excellent.
It's a show. I mean, that's just what I call it because there's all sorts of weird names that people call things that just annoy me because I'm a cranky old man. But it's me and my buddy Alan, who I've known Alan for 30 years. He's also the other half of PopKid Records that we'll talk about. The better half of PopKid Records that we'll talk about, I'm sure, in a little bit. But he and I do this show. It's a live stream. We usually try to do it once a week. And it's mostly focused on like just collecting. Like I'm a big collector. I know this is not a video thing, but yeah, you can see all of the nonsense and action figures and stuff behind me. I'm both of us are really big collectors. I've been like a crazy collector person like my whole life. So we talk a lot about that. We do just some like nostalgia based stuff. We've done 2 episodes about how much I love McDonald's stuff and that sort of thing. We also do this thing once a month. We just kind of started it, so it's not really a thing, but we're trying to do this thing once a month that we're calling the Rewind Club, where one of us picks a movie that we really love that the other one has either never seen or hasn't seen in like a really, really long time. And we both that person, one of them rewatches it and the other one watches it for the first time. And then we kind of compare notes. So, that this episode that we're doing this upcoming week, I'm making Alan watch King Kong versus Godzilla. So I'm excited to see his, response to that. So it's fun. Again, it's not, go check it out if you want. Not a ton of people have thus far, but it would be nice if people came on during the live stream and chatted and said hi and whatnot. It's fun for us, maybe only us, but it's
I think that's important.
I like doing it.
Yeah, having fun with it is what's most important, because you're doing it as a hobby. It's not necessarily like, this is what I'm trying to make a living doing. So, I mean, it'd be nice to make some money doing stuff like that, but it's not the goal, is to make money.
No,
so,
right, thus far it's costing money to do it. But
yes, it is. That is what podcasting is like. It's I gotta pay a hosting fee, or you could do it the hard way and do it manually by yourself, but that's a lot of time. So, yeah, it's a love. It's a passion. It's why I do the podcast for 8 years. So it's just for fun. I'd be doing this if no one was listening. So maybe not this many episodes, but
I am doing it and no one's listening. So, it's not that bad. It's not that bad.
I'm a collector as well. I collect records. I collect comic books. I, as a kid, collected like action figures and things like that. It all comes from our dad. My brother and I, we're just big time collectors because he was a big collector. So he has a huge action figure and comic collection, and he has a pretty small music collection. That stuff is more of like stuff from his like teens and early 20s, but comics and toys are where he stuck his flag.
I have a bad habit of collecting like everything. I collect records. I have I have so many records. I collect toys. I collect t-shirts. Like you're looking at someone who's clocking in at like 700-800 t-shirts.
Wow.
No one else is going to see this, but I just re-got like the Blues Brothers shirt that I had when I was a kid. Oh, wow. I got this shirt, not this shirt, but I got the same shirt at Universal Studios in 1991. And I finally found another one after all these years. So
wow.
I'm just a maniac.
And I currently am getting ready to move, and I'm looking at all the things that I own and have collected over the years. And I'm like, why did I do this? Why did I pick hobbies that literally weigh the most out of all other hobbies?
When we moved into this house, moving my record collection, my wife and I joke that like, you're going to have to scrub me out of the floor of this house. I am never moving again. Like I am never moving again, or I'll just burn it all down. Cause like my back can't take another move like that.
Well, I got 25 long boxes I need to move, and I just did 5, and I'm already ready to lay down. So, well, here's the big one. Let's talk about the record labels. So there's a reason why we are saving this for last, but when did the label start? I know you've mentioned that you have a co-owner of the label.
Yeah, owner. That's
I don't know how you describe it.
That implies something more official than I think it actually is. Alan started PopKid Records by himself in 1994. By the third release, which was the Porcelain Boys Marble split 7-inch, I was helping him out by helping like stuff records and stuff like that. And then just over the years, I just became more and more involved in it. Yeah, it's just one of those things where it's another way to just try to help people hear music that they might not hear otherwise. Anyone who does a quick glance at the PopKid Records catalog will likely find a whole bunch of bands that are like, wait, who is this? Wait, where are they from? We kind of have always prided ourselves on the fact that we'll find some of those bands that maybe you're not going to find anywhere else. We've released very few bands from America. Most of the bands that we've released are from other countries. Yeah, I mean, Alan started it all. I can't really tell you much about the origin story past, the things he's told me about the origin story. But I was there pretty early helping out. And then again, as the years went on, I was just more and more involved.
So would you say you're still pretty heavily involved with the label as it stands now, I guess?
As the label exists now, I am now probably doing, I mean, I don't think Alan would argue this. I'm doing the lion's share of it. Like he's there. He helps out, when he needs it. But the last few records have mostly been me with the help of some other, record labels that we've co-released some stuff with. We don't put out much anymore. It's just too expensive, and it's not necessarily because of the stuff we like to put out. We don't sell a ton of it in America. And especially when you start doing co-releases with other labels in other countries, you can't sell those records there anymore. So, you know, we put out a couple of things. I'm not sure how much more juice the label has in it at this point, to be honest with you. But I would there's a couple of things I would really, really, really like to do before, you know, we close it out. One of which is, more than anything, I wish I could put that Him Kerosene record out on vinyl. I would start killing people in alphabetical order for the opportunity to put that record out on vinyl. Not that I've really pursued it because it's so convoluted, because it came out on like a Warner Brothers subsidiary in Sweden. And I kind of don't even really know how to begin to unravel that, or what the costs would be to do something like that. But that's like that's day 2 of winning the lottery, is untangling the rights of that Him Kerosene record.
That is a great record too, because Zach put that on our radar. We had no idea what it even was, and those are sometimes my favorite, where it's like, I haven't even heard of this band. I cannot wait to see what it is. And I was just so into that record, and then like found the connection to like Star Market and like a lot of the other like Swedish stuff around that time. And I always had like an interest in Swedish like post-hardcore, hardcore kind of stuff anyway, because I was a big fan of bands like Blindside and like Self-Minded, and like the more like Refused-inspired bands from that time period. Yeah, and so I was looking at the catalog, like everything that you've put out in the past, and there were a few things that just like really jumped out at me. Stuff that I was already like familiar with. You know, I saw that you put out the second Chestnut Road record, and
which was a co-release with Brassnet Records. Scott, super awesome dude. And also the third label on there was Snuffy Smile Records, which from Japan, which I can't even tell you how much it means to me that the PopKid logo and the Snuffy Smile logo are on the same album. Like, oof. We'll talk more about them later.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love that Chestnut Road record, because I came across their first record, just a blog or something. I don't even remember how I even came across it.
Maybe mine, because I was writing about them like crazy as they were putting out records in 7 inches before we got involved with them.
Yeah, it's possible.
Do you know, funny story, I think Sunday is the 10-year anniversary of that second Chestnut Road record.
Wow.
Yeah.
I cannot believe it's been 10 years since the second record. Oh, man. And yeah, that band just kind of, that's kind of it, right? Like they did some like EPs and some stuff, some singles and stuff, but like it's the 2 LPs and that's it. I know they have other bands that they've done. There's that new band Shadow Tides, which is like a few different Chestnut Road people. But I love that record just because of that, you know, that Leatherface sound, that.
We'll be talking more about that sound later on as well.
We will. Yeah. There's a big one. Yeah. You've put out stuff by Custody, who I really enjoy that band as well. Where are they from? I'm blanking. Finland. That's right. And they're kind of doing the like Iron Sheik, Latterman sort of.
To me, their spirit animal is Sam I Am. Like that's what I hear when I hear. I mean, not just Sam I Am, but to me, Sam I Am is like really what I hear when I hear that band. Mm-hmm. I'm going to see if I can say "hear" a couple more times in that sentence.
And the one that actually I became aware of thanks to your label and thanks to Zach kind of saying like, hey, they got this record's coming out, is that most recent Shoplifters record, which I believe is still the most recent album you guys have put out. It is.
They're from Serbia. They are actually the band that we've put out the most stuff by now. We've done a 7-inch and 2 records with them. We'd never done a second LP with any of our bands before, although you could sort of consider it because we did the Porcelain Boys record, and then 2 of the 3 guys from the Porcelain Boys were in the band Jettison. So that's sort of, it's similar, but Shoplifters is the first band that we ever got to put out 2 LPs by.
Is there anything that you've put out that to this day you still think, wow, I can't believe we got to do that?
No, I can kind of believe that we got to do most of the stuff. It's not like we have like a ton of really big bands that went on to incredible things Probably Star Market has the most notoriety of anyone that we've put out Vibe, just because they had that record on, what was the name of that? Deep Elm.
Oh,
They put a record out on Deep Elm after us. So, they had some more notoriety, but when we put that record out, like people in America didn't really know that band. So, I can believe we put, I love the records. Like some of the records, I can't believe they're so awesome, but I can believe, I can believe we put them out.
Yeah. Probably because you put the man hours into it that you're just like, I think I'm ready to move on to something else now. Because I have a friend who does a label, and like sometimes I hear about like everything that goes into running a label and pressing a record, and by the end of it, I feel like sometimes he's sick of the record by the time it's hitting, mailboxes. And...
Well, I will say this: as far as the last few PopKid records, almost all of them have been co-released in some capacity with Brass Neck Records, and Scott does the heavy lifting of that stuff. I cannot say enough about how great a person Scott is and how much he has helped keep PopKid an ongoing concern, because he does the heaviest of the heavy lifting. So all respect to Scott from Brass Neck. Top guy.
Excellent label too. Love the stuff they put out.
Get him on the show. He's rad.
Yeah, I've toyed with the idea of doing, UK guests. There's a time difference, so I would have to make sure that, we could get it done, but
I don't think he sleeps, so I think you're fine.
That might help. That helps. Well, cool. Thank you for answering those questions. There's a lot of really interesting stuff that you do, and your outlets are really fun. I recommend everyone check them out. I'm going to have links to all of that in the show notes so people can follow along with what you're doing.
Yeah, I don't think I'm a very interesting person or an interesting guest, but I try to stand next to interesting people, so that's kind of the way I do it.
You don't have to sell yourself short. Very interesting.
I'm a tremendous slouch.
All right, so this is the guest list. So part of the whole concept is I invite guests on to make lists, and I have a list of prompts that I hand out to the guests. And you were actually only my second one of these that we've actually recorded yet.
Happy to be a number 2.
Yeah. Yeah, I have like this list now of just like all these people. I'm like, well, I got to get to them and them and them, but I'm also trying to not like overextend myself with the show by like trying to book too much too fast. So it's more of a slower pace, but I'm glad you're here. I'm very glad to have you on, because I've definitely thought about you. I was like, he would be great to have on the show. And then you responded to one of the posts I made about having a guest show about, fine, I'll come on. And then I was like, all right, I'm going to hold you to it. I'm going to make you come on the show now.
Now it's just me being an ass. So.
So the prompt that I gave you might have been a little difficult, but I think we got some interesting stuff out of it. So I gave you the prompt of making a list of your favorite obscure or lesser known artists. And I guess we could kind of define what that means, because I know you were initially trying to figure out what lane to go in. And
you took years off of my life with this prompt, like just trying to figure out, like, because when you live in like the world that we kind of live in and some of the sub scenes within that world, like, where do you draw the line? Where what qualifies as obscure? Because something that might be obscure to you is just like, is a band I've listened to every day for 30 years. And the weirdo people in my little scene, like, they all know that like, that's not obscure to them. So like, I drove myself crazy trying to figure out like where that line was, like what was obscure for the sake of being obscure, and what was bands that maybe someone wouldn't have heard about, but like at least I have something to say about them. They've had some sort of impact on me. But yeah, I had a really tough time, and I spent some time talking to Alan, and we were just driving each other crazy, just like listing bands. Like, does that count as obscure? I don't know. Is that obscure? Like, I could have very easily been like, all right, Justin, here we go. we're going to listen to this Buford 7-inch that nobody in the world has except for me, Alan, and, their parents. But and don't get me wrong, those Buford 7-inches are awesome, but I don't have a ton to say about them other than, well, they're great and people should go buy them. So I tried to stay away from bands that were just obscure for the sake of it and tried to come with bands that had some sort of impact or were representative of some sort of scene that I was into.
Yeah, and I was looking at your list when you first sent it to me, and only one that I had actually heard of outright. That was the one that I actually knew. And then I saw some things about, connections to other artists that I was familiar with. It's oh, okay, that kind of gives me an idea of where they are. But I didn't know them specifically. They did a split with somebody else. And we'll talk about specifically one or two, but...
It was very challenging defining obscure, so I tried really hard to pick some bands that I felt I could talk about, that I had some stories about, or that were representative of a scene, that were representative of a time in my life. And there's lots of stuff. I do also want to say that this list does not exist without Him Kerosene being on it. And the only reason that Him Kerosene is not on it is because you already did an entire show about them. Yeah. But they are the number one band that I do not think has ever gotten the recognition that they've deserved, especially in America. So I must say that while I was able to whittle it down to 6, I am sneaking in Him Kerosene because they would 100% be on this list had you not already done an entire show about them.
Yeah, I mean, you could have included them too. I don't think it would have hurt anything, or no one's going to be like, I can't believe he wasted one of his picks on one that's already been covered before. But
well, I'll say this. I do believe that right about now you should edit in a brief clip of Untied and begin.
Well, thank you for that production note there. I'll make sure to include that in the future editing. Me will be like, oh yeah, put that clip in. But yeah, that is an excellent record. If you have not listened to that episode, please go back in our catalog and find it, because it was a very fun record to talk about.
It was also very amusing because as you guys researched, the only stuff that you found was stuff that I wrote. Yeah. So that was kind of interesting to me, listening to that one.
Yeah, it's you're the research. You were the source for most of this info, so you didn't even need to listen.
So anyway, we'll just get that out of the way. Now we can get to the list that I provided you properly.
Yes, so you submitted a list of 6 options for me, and...
I couldn't get it down to 5. I tried, I just couldn't.
Yeah, that is perfectly acceptable. So, the reason why we brought up the label last is because it's going to tie into your first selection here. So what do you want to talk about first?
So the first band that I wanted to talk about is Chester Copperpot.
Come on out from where you are and join us where we're at. Never mind what others say, 'cause we're just not like that. Summertime, the weather's nice and everyone's in love. We're having fun, we're getting drunk, and no one cares about being called upon. All slum, all bum.
They are from Sweden, and in no way am I saying that any of the other PopKid bands are in any way, lesser or not as important. But I feel that, man, Chester Copperpot just doesn't get their due. Their record, we've put out a 7-inch by them, we put out a full length by them. They have another full length, which is how we discovered them. And I just don't understand why people don't love them. How that band is just not beloved in the same ways that Superchunk or Fountains of Wayne are. I don't get it. Their first album, Poems and Short Stories, unbelievable. The record that we were so lucky to put out, Kings of Kirby. I can't even tell you how often I still listen to that record, 20-something years later. They're from Gothenburg, Sweden. Like I said, they have 2 albums out and a CD EP and a 7-inch. We did the 7-inch as well. Alan actually discovered them by reading a review of their first record, Poems and Short Stories. I believe he said that the person who reviewed it in Maximum Rock and Roll compared them to the Doughboys. So he went out and bought the record and was like, wow, these guys sound absolutely nothing like the Doughboys. Like, that could not be more wrong. But, but Chester couldn't have been more right, I believe is the way that he has phrased it in the past. They are just such a fun band. They're the nicest guys in the whole wide world. They came when Alan got married, they came over to play like a bachelor party that we kind of had set up for him. They're just the sweetest guys. They make the funnest music. And I just wish more people listen to them. I mean, at this point, I couldn't even sell you too many more of their records. I think I only got a couple of their CDs left. So it's not a matter of like me trying to hawk their wares or anything like that. But man, that is a band that just doesn't get their due. They are so amazing. And they're one of the reasons why I will never say that PopKid Records is done. Because if Chester Copperpot really wants to put something out, Alan and I are going to find a way to do it, because like someone has to. They're just too good not to have more records out.
Yeah, so with the list of stuff you gave me, I was like, well, I don't think I'm going to be able to listen to every artist's full catalog, so I had to be kind of strategic with what I chose to listen to. And so what I did with that band is I went with the 2 records that you put out. So the 7-inch, the Bittersweet Tunes, and then I did the LP, the Kings of Kirby, and enjoyed both those records immensely. I liked the kind of like the scrappiness of the 7-inch. I guess it's actually several years earlier, right? The LP
quite a bit earlier, actually. That one came out, I believe, in 98, and I think the album was 2005.
That sounds roughly right.
I'm probably remembering it wrong, and if Frederick or Nicholas ever listen to this, they'll probably yell at me. But I feel like that first 7-inch, I think they recorded it in like a kitchen or something like that. Like it was a very DIY sort of, like you said, lo-fi, scrappy sort of thing. But the tunes are just there. Like those songs just kill me. I Care and Think About You Every Night, I Swear, which is on that 7-inch. I love like that sort of almost demo-ish quality to the way they recorded that song. And to me, it makes me enjoy the album version that's on Kings of Kirby even more, because like I had that backbone of the song in my ear for, several years before they hit us with the, hey, here's the one that actually sounds nicely, not nicely, but because the other one's nice too, just in a different way. This is the fancier sounding version.
Right. The more produced version of it.
Yeah, and it just blows me away. But again, please tell me more about your experience with Chester Copperpot.
I went with the LP first, just because I wanted to get I wanted to get full lengths down for sure. So I went with that one first, and then I just really enjoyed it. It is this bright, power poppy, kind of scrappy. There's a punk element to their sound as well too. Yeah, I just had a lot of fun with it. It was very cool to see, because this is a band that I did not know. At first, I was like, Chester Copperpot, that kind of sounds familiar, but it could just be just Copperpot. Chester Copperpot's like, it's a thing, right? It's a literature thing, right? I believe, or something. No, like
it's a character. It's a dead character in the Goonies.
Ah, okay. That's the connection there. Yeah, and then Copperpot's like a name that pops up all the time. So I think that's what I was doing. I was just conflating some different things, because I don't think I knew anything about this band, but. Yeah, I definitely want to check out more. It seems like their stuff is really scattered, and depending on where you're looking, everything may not be listed. So I was looking like at the Rate Your Music, and it doesn't have the Kings of Kirby listed on Rate Your Music, but it does have the first one, the poems.
Poems and Short Stories, which came out on Dolores Records in Sweden, and I believe Manifesto put it out in America.
And so, like, it was kind of hard to kind of like track down what they even had put out that was specifically theirs.
It's also tough because since it's a Goonies reference, they're not the only Chester Copperpot that's floating around out there. But again, they don't have a ton. They have the Poems and Short Stories full length. They have the Kings of Kirby full length. They have a CD EP that also came out on Dolores, and they have the 7-inch. That's pretty much it. Although it's funny, when we were going to put out that record, the Kings of Kirby, they sent us like 50 demos to dig through to pick out the songs that we wanted to do for the record. And there is so much great stuff that did not make that record. They recorded another EP that we were supposed to put out, but we just didn't, unfortunately. It just didn't quite work out. And I wish those songs had gotten out there, and maybe we'll be able to get something going with those at some point. But there's some just, I can't say enough good things about Chester Copperpot, one of the best bands that have ever lived, and I just wish that they were on a label much better than ours, so they could get a lot more records out there.
Yeah. Yeah, you want the eyeballs on it. And like what you're doing is a service, but like as a fan of the band, you're like, more people need to know about this band. Like we need more labels putting their stuff out just so people can find them. So that is cool that they sent you so much. That means there's a ton of unreleased stuff then, right?
There's a ton. And, Frederick is such a creative guy. He's just, he's a genius, in his way for what he wants to do. He's a genius. And, and he's also just the nicest guy. Love that dude.
Yeah. Well, would you want to move on to our next selection here?
All right, so now we're going to start going a little chronologically. We kept Chester Copperpot just to sort of keep the PopKid stuff separate from everything else. So the next band on my list is Do Rag. And they're a band from Tucson, Arizona. They put out 2 full-length albums. The first one is called Chunked and Muddled. The second one is called What We Do. They have, I think, 4 7-inches, a split 7-inch, and a tape called Barbershop, although the tape is, I think it's 6 songs long, and 5 of them are songs that are also on the What We Do album, but they're different recordings of them. This is one of those first bands that I got into kind of post-Beck. I think I had heard that they had opened for Beck on like the tour that went through that I didn't get to see because I wasn't really aware that going to see bands play live was an active concern. I didn't know you could really go do that. But I believe my friend Joe may have found one of their 7 inches first. It was either Joe or I, but we were both aware of some sort of Beck connection. So I think the Hussey Bowler 7-inch was the first of their 7 inches that I got. And I liked that 7-inch a lot. And their first record, I think, is good. Then they put out a 7-inch called Engine Bread, which was the A-side of that 7-inch. And man, I loved that song. I thought that song was just so noisy and weird and crazy. And then What We Do came out, and that record just blew my mind. It is so weird and awesome and unlike anything you've ever heard. Now, so for people who don't know Durag, and the funny thing is of all of the bands on this list, they're probably the most well-known of them because they do sort of have this cult thing. They opened for Beck, they opened for Ween, they opened for Drive Like Jehu a few times. Like they were part of that, 92 to 95, 6 scene of hip bands, for lack of better things. But if you don't know Durag, so the singer is Bob Log III, who has now had a solo career as well. And he plays this distorted, like, slide guitar. I think it's called a resonator guitar. It's got the big silver dish in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And at least back then, he sung into this vocal apparatus that was sort of hooked in through a vacuum tube, like blown out into a couple of speakers. He later did this thing where he started singing through an actual telephone that was like taped into a helmet that he wore on his head. The drummer, Thermos Malling, he kneels on the ground and he bangs like cardboard boxes and metal trays and pieces of like a shopping cart. And all of his percussion is just like found instruments. So the sound that they create is just unreal. It's just so much fun. And I got to see them play at Maxwell's in Hoboken, New Jersey in 1996. And there wasn't a ton of people at that show. There's maybe like 40 people there. That is one of the coolest shows I have ever been to. They were so different, so unlike anything that I had heard or seen before or since, to be completely honest with you. But they were just awesome. And they're weird, they're different, they're definitely rooted in indie rock, but they have a lot of like that sort of blues sort of influence to them with the slide guitar and stuff like that. They fit neatly into punk DIY stuff because they're kind of abrasive personalities on top of everything. They're just awesome. Like, I love Durag, and the Bob Log the Third solo stuff. There's some good songs on there, but I feel like he could never really get the same sort of fullness out of like he played a drum machine was a lot of the percussion in some of the early stuff. He then started using like a kick drum and a floor cymbal. So he would like play the drums with his feet while he was playing the guitar with his hands in his solo shows. And again, it's super impressive and he's really, really fun live. But I feel like the fullness of that sound that Durag had, he was never really able to get back to that again. So while I like the Bob Log the Third stuff, not as much as Durag, which I love. And this is the one out of all the bands, I'm very curious about your opinion of Durag.
So this one was actually the hardest for me to find much from. I switched from, I'm no longer on Spotify, I switched to YouTube Music, which is fine because it's usually a great place to find stuff, especially like out of print stuff. But I wasn't able to find like no one had really uploaded the full album, and I could find like bits and pieces. I do know that one of the records you said, Chunked and Muddled, you said like avoid that one first because it's a little bit more raw, a little bit more rough production wise. So I did hear some of that. I heard some of What We Do, and I've heard some of the stuff off Barbershop. I will say, this was the hardest thing for me to get into. This one was a little tough for me to get through. Part of that maybe just because I had to find like bits and pieces of the records to really kind of hear anything from. But sonically, like it's even like the better produced recorded things are still pretty rough production wise, and that sounds like it comes from their equipment that they use. It sounds like they're just using like random.
It's definitely their
things.
Aesthetic for sure.
So this was the one that I got the least grasp of what they're going for. I know there is like a comparison point to the John Spencer Blues Explosion in some ways.
Thermos Malling, the percussionist, he played on a couple of tracks on the what's the name of that? No, the Worry album. Now I Got Worry. He's on a couple of tracks on that John Spencer Blues Explosion album, but I don't think the sound is similar, really. You know, the John Spencer Blues Explosion is doing a much, much more polished thing.
Yeah.
And they don't play like it's the slide guitar. The slide guitar is just nuts. Like, to me, there's just nothing in the world like that.
It was interesting because listening to it, it did harken back to those like really old Delta blues recordings where like they recorded terribly just because the equipment wasn't around back then, and even for the time they didn't have the good stuff to record stuff. So listening to it, I was like, I could kind of see a little bit of that in their DNA, that like old school pre-electric, you know, still a lot of acoustic blues, you know, is fascinating. I will say it was probably the most interesting thing that you submitted in the list here. I don't know if it's personally my taste, but hearing about them and learning about them was very interesting. And I could see why Beck would want them to open, because it does seem like the just weird enough thing that Beck would be like, I want that on the show.
Plus, they opened for him on the Mellow Gold tour, where he was being purposefully confrontational with audiences who were just there to hear Loser from the radio. So I'm sure that had something to do with it. Yeah, I don't want to make it sound like I'm saying anything bad about Durag, because I love them. But if you get any sort of metrics that as soon as you hit play on their sound clip, like your audience just falls off a cliff, I don't know that I would be shocked by that.
Yeah.
So stay with it. I don't know when you're going to edit it in, but just, you know, however long it is, stay with it. There's much more accessible stuff coming, I promise.
Yeah, it was fascinating. I'm glad you put that on my radar because it's funny that it is the more well-known thing, but yet still kind of the harder thing to track down.
It certainly was more I think the height of their popularity is probably higher than most of the other bands on this list. But I do think that their records have sort of faded. And that was one of the things that Alan and I were talking about when we were trying to define obscurity, because a big part of that is time. And as time goes on, some of the stuff that maybe didn't seem so obscure just becomes more obscure, either because it goes out of print, they don't bother to do the digital thing, people pass on, that kind of stuff. Like, the fan base gets older, they don't care about the music as much as they did when they were younger. So time is definitely a big part of obscurity. And I think that more than any other band on this list, I think Do-Rag fell victim to time because their stuff wasn't preserved maybe as well as some of the other things were.
Yeah, I'd say a majority of what you selected was fairly easy to find. I was able to find some of that stuff pretty easy. This one and one of your other ones were maybe the hardest to find. But yeah, Do-Rag was the toughest to find more of. So
yeah, I warned you. They've left virtually no digital footprint.
Yeah, I think that does count as obscurity, though. A lot of times, yeah, it could have been big at the time, but did it carry on to the future? The present day. That's a different kind of obscurity, but it is still obscurity.
Yeah.
You want to move on to our next one?
Sure, absolutely. So again, this next one is sort of chronologically. The next two happened pretty close to each other, but the next band that I have on the list is from Victoria, Canada. They are called Bum. Bum is just one of those awesome sort of, I think a lot of people throw around the word pop punk as like a kind of like a dirty word, which I've never thought it was, but they are a punk band that has just gigantic hooks, catchy choruses. Their album Wanna Smash Sensation, what a perfect record that thing is. They have another full length called I Am Superwoman, but I don't believe Rob Nesbitt is on most of that record, who is like one of the two main songwriters on Wanna Smash Sensation, along with Andrew Malloy. They have an EP, they have a live record. They have like 12 7-inches, just tons and tons and tons of 7-inches. For me, I kind of discovered them when I sort of started getting into that post Mr. T experience, sicko zoinks sort of situation that I ended up being interested in. So things that were more akin to that kind of pop punk and less akin to like, the Diesel Boys and Strung Outs of the world.
Yeah.
The stuff that was a little bit more focused on melody was the stuff that I was more interested in. And Bum was recommended to me by my buddy Alan when he worked at the record store. And it was recommended as just something great, and I love the record immediately, but man, what a grower that record is. I love that record more every single time I listen to it. Like, I can't get enough of that record, and I love it way more now than I did when I first heard it. And I loved it when I first heard it, but it's just one of those records that it's got hooks that just claw their way into you. And they weren't really an active concern anymore by the time that I got into them, which was probably 95, 96. I'd probably say 96 was when I bought Wanna Smash Sensation. So they weren't really a band anymore at that point. So forever, they were the number one band on my list of bands that I wish I could see live that I couldn't see. And I was really, really psyched because in 2019, they played the Seattle Pop Punk Festival put on by Ian from Sicko and the Subjunctives. And man, that was just like, Alan and I both, we flew out to Seattle to go see that show. Sicko played one night, Bum played the other night. So amazing seeing Bum play live. Like and again, the nicest bunch of dudes. Just really, 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 really cool folks. All four of them are just ace people. And I'm so happy that Bum exists, because that album, what a smash sensation. Oh man. What a record. What a record. Zach will talk your ear off about them too. Like, they're another band that he really can get behind, because they're just rad.
Yeah, actually, I think this week, we have like Last FM profiles, and like, you can do that thing where it's just like, oh, this week, this is what I listened to. So you could do the little like graphic to get, people do it online all the time. And I posted one and it had the Bum album in it. And he was like, oh, I really considered like paying you to cover that album one day, because I really want to hear you guys talk about it. And I didn't tell him that we were going to be talking about it on this episode. So I'm hoping this will be like a pleasant surprise for him that we're talking about Bum right now.
You should do a whole episode on them for free. It should be your pleasure to do that whole episode on Bum.
Well, I mean, they're on my radar now, so it's definitely something that I will be looking at.
What'd you think, though?
Oh, it was very fun. You called it pop punk. That is what I would call it too, but it is not the most common version of pop punk. There's that epithet kind of sound that was like, it spins out of skate punk and melodic hardcore and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's not that.
It is not that at all. It's not even really the Lookout kind of pop punk.
No.
Because that is a little bit more...
It's more melodic, I think.
Yeah, it's...
the harmonies are a little stronger than a lot of other like bands that you would put in that genre.
Yeah, I listened to it and like I don't even know if this is 100% the most obvious comparison. When I listen to it, it's not a one-to-one comparison, but I think of something like Big Drill Car. They weren't exactly one kind of thing. They called that popcore at the time. It was like this own weird version of pop punk.
Big Drill Car is another band that I love, and another band that you can kind of start drawing lines to All and the Descendants and that sort of thing with them. But again, and as melodic as Big Drill Car are, I would say that Bum is probably more similar to Big Drill Car than they are to Lagwagon, right, for example. But they're a different concern. Like, I don't have a lot of really good, they kind of sound like with Bum. They're really unique in their way to kind of channel like just punk energy into super poppy, catchy, very sing-along kind of songs.
I guess you could say there's a power pop element too, because...
For sure.
Especially in like the early 90s, there wasn't as much of that.
Especially because, like Kurt Bloch from the Fastbacks was involved in like recording that stuff as well. So there's some of that going on.
Yeah, I listened to 2 records by them. I listened to Wanna Smash Sensation. Can't read tonight. And then I listened to I Am Superwoman as well. I listened to that one today because I was going back to getting, listening to more records that I haven't heard yet. I think Wanna Smash Sensation is probably the stronger batch of songs, but maybe I Am Superwoman is the slightly better production for me, but I don't know.
Yeah, I Am Superwoman has a lot of cover songs on it as well.
It's a fun record, but I think Wanna Smash Sensation is the one you should check out if you were trying to find, where to start with Bum. It's the first record, makes it easy to get in there. I had a lot of fun with it, though. Like, that was the first thing I listened to, too, because it was the first on your list, because your list was not the same order we're doing today. But this was the first one I listened to, and I was like, I am in for a treat. If everything is, fun like this, I'm really looking forward to what we get here. So, yeah, maybe Bum will come up on the main show one day. I'll have to talk my co-host into it, but...
Yeah, it's good stuff. They're another one of those bands that I wish more people could hear. Their stuff is also not horrifically out of print. They recently reissued Wanna Smash Sensation, so you can, I'm pretty sure you can still get it reasonably easy. That was only a couple of years ago that they did that. So people should definitely check them out. They have a Bandcamp page, so you can get their stuff there. I'm not much of a streamer, so I don't know where they stream stuff. I don't care where they stream stuff. Go to Bandcamp. Come on. Give me a break.
I listen to it on Bandcamp just because it's just easy to listen there. Yeah, that's a very strong one, though. That was one of my favorites out of the batch that you gave me here.
Cool. Well, I think the next one on the list is the one that you actually had heard of. They're a band from Scotland called Broccoli. I picked them, one, because their album Home is easily top 10 record of all time for me. I could, depending on the day, I could probably stick it in my top 5. Like, I adore that record. And I also feel like they're an excellent band to talk about because they're very representative of what is probably my favorite scene in music that has ever existed, which I always sort of think it rotates around the record label Crackle Records. And like the bands that I'm talking about are Broccoli, Chopper, Skimmer, Crocodile God, Hootin' 3 Car, Reverse. And then you can kind of take it back a little bit. And, you know, you got Snuff, you have Leatherface, you have Mega City 4, you have Senseless Things. Like that group of bands, that's probably my favorite scene. Like the only thing I don't love about being from New Jersey is that scene happened in England. Yeah. Although it did also sort of happen in New Jersey too, because the only other place that a lot of that stuff really got a lot of love in America is, again, based around like the Flipside Records crew. Like a lot of the folks who went into there ended up getting into those bands as well. But that scene is such an amazing scene. You know, Snuff and Leatherface certainly being like, you know, the great granddaddies of that scene, very much influencing that sound. Broccoli takes that Leatherface influence, keeps the gruff vocals, but a little smoother, a little more Blake, a little less Lemmy. I think if we're gonna talk about the amount of gravel per square inch in his vocals. The songs are really melodic. I'm going to say melodic and hook like a ton today. So apologies for that.
I'm like that too. It's the easiest thing to say when you're describing something.
But to me, they're a smoother sounding Leatherface. And I got it. Like the reason that I like Leatherface is actually because of Broccoli. Like I listened to Broccoli, first. It all kind of stems from like Snuff was the first of those bands that I got into. And then, because I liked Snuff, Alan had recommended, like, and when he was working at the record store, he recommended Chopper. And I really, really dug that Chopper. I think it only had 3 7-inches at the time, and I couldn't get the first one. The first one was out of print, so it was just the second 2 Chopper 7-inches, and that kind of made me start digging around that scene. And then I bought some Broccoli 7-inches, and their first. If it's a CD, it's an album. If it's the LP, I think there's only 7 or 8 songs on it, so it's kind of like a mini LP. But the first Broccoli record and those 7-inches, man, I love those. And I remember just I don't know how Leatherface came up, but I remember saying something like, "Oh, Leatherface, do they sound like Broccoli?" And I was told, "No, Broccoli sounds like Leatherface. You have that completely mixed up." So that's when I started checking out Leatherface, and that just blew that wide open. Like again, Mush by Leatherface. Top 3 record. Like, no question about that Mush by Leatherface is a top 3 record of all time. And I was really, really lucky. So I was lucky and unlucky at the same time. So Alan and I went to England in 1997. Primarily, we stayed in Leeds. We stayed with the folks from Crackle Records. And I got to see Broccoli play while I was over there. They came through with a band called Metro Shifter, who they're an American band. And the only time I've ever heard them is at that show. And that wasn't my scene, but Broccoli played and I was so excited to see them. And then they went and played mostly songs that I didn't know because they were from the new record Home that hadn't come out yet. Like they were still working on it. So I didn't really get to hear a whole lot of the songs that I knew. And then when that record came out, I was like, oh man, these are now almost all my favorite Broccoli songs are on this new record. I probably heard all of them when I was in England, and I didn't know them, so I didn't really remember them. So I'm very lucky that I got to see Broccoli play, period, being an American.
Right.
Not a whole lot of
Yeah.
us have had the opportunity to do that. But I'm really bummed that I didn't get to see them play after I heard Home, so I could hear those songs live and know what they are.
Yes, this is the band that I did know. This is the one. Home is a record that I absolutely adore. It is one of my absolute favorite records. It is such an incredibly good album. I cannot sing that record's praises enough. We should do that album on the show too, because we haven't done it yet just because of the luck of the draw of how we do the show. But
fine,
yeah.
I'll come on and do that episode with you. If I must, if you're twisting my arm, I will come and talk about Broccoli for an entire episode. No problem.
Yeah. I love that band. Leatherface is one of my all-time favorite bands. They're like a top 10 favorite band for me. So I was Leatherface first, and then I learned about Broccoli later. And then I remember hearing it for the first time being like, holy shit, this is like, it's like Leatherface, but also just different enough that you're not doing like a completely derivative thing, you know?
Yeah, it's smooth in a way that I can't completely explain. Like,
Yeah.
I sound like I'm trying to hawk cigarettes in the 80s by saying that it's smooth, but it's, if you listen to it, and again, you're going to edit in something at some point, you're going to be like, hey, here's some Broccoli. And you're going to hear the Leatherface there. You're going to hear like the Jawbreaker there, but it's different. I don't know how to describe that it's different, but it is. It's different.
Mm-hmm. It is different. And you're right, it is hard to put in words what it is. It's one of those things where it's like, you'll hear it when you hear it. You'll be like, okay, I see where you get Leatherface. I see how it's different.
Maybe if I wasn't a terrible writer, I could explain it better. But unfortunately, I am a terrible writer, so I can only say it's awesome but different.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Like, I'm really bad at kind of describing what I'm listening to, but yeah, Broccoli's phenomenal. And I'm with you too. That UK scene, that late 80s, early 90s to mid 90s UK scene is so full of great bands. You named a bunch there that I really love too. And it's one of my favorite periods to dig into. It's just like, you could pull just something at random from that time period from the same scene. You'd be like, oh, listen to this HDQ record. And then you'd be like, I fucking love it. Well, this is great. You know, like,
well,
yeah.
anything Dickie Hammond touches is crazy. You know, you got
Magic.
like Stocco, you got the Jones, like just, I mean, come on, give me a break.
Yeah.
It's just all incredible.
Did you know he was in the Toy Dolls at some point?
So is Duncan from Snuff. I think Duncan from Snuff might technically still be in the Toy Dolls playing drums.
I just thought it was kind of funny to be like, huh, Dickie was in Toy Dolls. That's so weird. I mean, Toy Dolls is just mainly the one dude, but very funny band. That band makes me laugh. Toy Dolls are a strange band. But, yeah, the two Broccoli records, because that's all there is, the studio albums. And then there's all the singles and the EPs, and there's a
singles
collection.
Home is their best record. The singles comp is also awesome. And the other thing, though, is the CD version of the first album has a lot of those singles on it as well. But you can't go wrong with Home. But, man, don't overlook that singles comps. There are some gems on that guy.
And describing seeing them, that's kind of funny, because, like, it's an interesting spot for a band to be in when they're playing live shows, because they're excited for these new songs. And they're also at this level where maybe a majority of the audience isn't even that familiar with their old songs. So they kind of have that free reign to kind of build a set however they like. But in
fairness, that show, there was like 12 people there. So
Yeah.
it's not like they had a gigantic fan base that they felt they needed to cater to.
Right. So they just made the set that they wanted to play. And I'm sure it was just
Metro
like,
Shifter was not a draw in Leeds in 1997.
yeah, I know the name Metro Shifter just from reading. I couldn't tell you what they sound like. I don't even know what style they play. Like, they're just a name that I've seen over the years, but I know nothing about them. That's interesting little pairing there. But yeah, I think Broccoli is one of those bands that maybe the story grew after they were, done, and decided to move on to other things. And
Yeah, but I don't think like, this is another one of those bands where I really kind of struggled with, is this obscure? Because if you talk to any of the people that I run around with, like the music fans that have similar taste in me. Like, Broccoli's like king of the world. Like, everybody knows who Broccoli is. But, like, as soon as you leave our little world, like, not a lot of people really know them. And, which is a bummer because, again, they're awesome. But I think they're a band that doesn't get their due. And the main reason that I want, like, are they as obscure in America as Hootin' Three Car is? No, they're not. And Hootin' Three Car is also just awesome. Like, go. Yeah. Okay, if Scott from Brass Neck listens to this, or if Aston from Boss Tunage listens to this, will one of you guys please put out By Means of Maybe on vinyl? Please? Can someone do that for me? I want that record on vinyl. I can't put it out. I don't have the money for that. So one of you needs to put that out, or someone needs to put that out. But, like, you know, they're incredible. They're awesome. I could have picked any one of those bands from that list. And they're all obscure in their own way. They're all awesome in their own way. I just picked Broccoli because of the bunch, they've always been my favorite. Again, discounting like your Snuffs and your Leatherface, because most people who listen to punk have at least heard of them.
Yeah, and I think this does kind of qualify as obscure enough, because, yeah, it's the step away. It's not, you know, most people have heard of Leatherface if you're, like, deep enough into punk. Primarily because so many U.S. bands cited them as influences on them, you know, like Hot Water Music, Dillinger 4, a lot of Florida bands. They were all citing Leatherface's influence. So that's kind of how most Americans, I feel like, learned about them. So yeah, unless you dove headfirst into that UK scene, you might not run across Broccoli. I mean, their name is Broccoli too. It's not even like the coolest name.
It is not a particularly Googleable, able to be Googleable. It's not a great name for searching.
And they have a self-titled called Broccoli. Their biggest record's called Home. Like, there's hundreds of records called Home, you know? So, yeah, it's easy to not know who they are. So, yeah. And I also could see why maybe you would have been as interested in Chestnut Road, you know, because they took their name from a Broccoli song. Sonically, they're probably more like Broccoli than Leatherface, but they're influenced by both, so.
Them and there's another UK band that was... I mean, it's funny to think they were like the next generation after like the Hootin' Three Car, Broccoli, Choppers of the world. But there's a band called Blocko that was just like a couple years after that. And I think Blocko and Chestnut Road are probably the two bands that have the most similarities to Broccoli.
Yeah. Do you know the band Bear Trade? They were another UK band.
Yeah.
They had some Blocko people in Bear Trade.
Yes, the bass player was also was in Blocko.
Loved Bear Trade. Blocko was really fun too, but yeah, Bear Trade was my intro to those particular musicians. One of the lead singer of Bear Trade has a new band now called Ugly Criers. I think it came out on Little Rocket and maybe another label. Really fun record though.
Little Rocket's another awesome label. Puts out lots of really cool stuff. Yeah,
run by Graham Philliskirk, who is in Leatherface. He was in Leatherface, I guess.
Has been in.
Yeah. He was in the most recent run that they were around. So I don't think Leatherface is ever coming back without Dickie, but sad, but Graham's keeping the spirit alive though.
Thanks for bringing us down. Like, great.
Yeah. Bummed.
Now it's my responsibility to dig out of this depressing hole you just dug for us. Let's move on to the next band, shall we?
I think you could do it. I think you can get us out of here.
All right, so the next band on my list is tangentially connected to Broccoli, in my opinion. They're a band called Cigaretteman. They are from Japan. They're very much part of the Snuffy Smile scenes, although that label changed its name to Snuffy Smiles after a while. But to me, they're always Snuffy Smile because that's what they were when I first started listening to them. And they are a band that just has 2 7-inches, 2 split 7-inches, and a bunch of compilation songs. They never put out a full album before they split up. For me, they get to represent all of Japan. and they get to represent the Snuffy Smile record label in particular. I started buying Snuffy Smile 7-inches for the UK bands. You know, Chopper did a split 7-inch on Snuffy Smile. Broccoli did a split 7-inch on Snuffy Smile. Skimmer did one on Snuffy Smile. Hoot and Three Card, like all of those bands did split 7-inches with Japanese bands on Snuffy Smile. And I bought all those to get, you know, songs by the UK bands that I liked. And boy, oh boy, it turns out those Japanese bands were really, really good. And some of them were even better than the UK bands. You know, there's so many great, like we could do 7 episodes on Japanese punk rock and we would barely ever scratch the surface. Like there's
I would
so
like
much.
that very much because I love Japanese punk music. It is one of my favorite things in the entire world. So
There's so much. Like, you know, you got the stuff from the 90s. You have The Urchin, Navel, Love Men, 3 Minute Movie, Husking Bee, Blue, Blotto, Gleam Garden, Minorities Blues Band, Ron Ron Clue, stuff like that. Then you have some of the more modern stuff. You know, you got like Shipyards and the Hum Hums and What a Nights and Your Pest Band and that kind of stuff. Like, there's just so much stuff out there. And like, again, that's me just barely scratching the surface. And most of that is Snuffy Smile stuff. And there's a bunch of stuff, you know, like the anti-new wave stuff, the Waterslide Records, like Kazu from Waterslide Records is, again, one of the nicest people I have ever met in my whole entire life. His label is just so awesome. There's so much good stuff out there. But Cigaretteman in particular, they were one of those bands that really connected with me when I started hearing their songs. They have just like this really gruff punk rock stuff with this super sugary vocals on top of it. You know, the singer's a woman and she's got such a unique voice that you wouldn't think fits in with that kind of like scrappy, like again, we'll call it pop punk, even though I think it's not necessarily what people would consider pop punk when they hear that word. But you wouldn't think that vocals that sound like that would necessarily mesh with that kind of like scrappy guitar work. But man, it's perfect. It's, you know, I think about it sort of like food, where some people say like, oh, you need something that's slightly acidic to kind of cut through the richness of something. And I feel like her vocals are kind of like that. They just sort of like, they cut through like that fuzz of the guitar in a way that's so unique and so dynamic. And I love that band. I need a Cigaretteman shirt. Like, I want a Cigaretteman t-shirt so bad. I want someone to compile all of those 7 inches and compilation songs onto an album. Please let me co-release that with someone. You know, I'm happy to throw down however many dollars it takes to be, you know, 1/8 of the labels that are putting that out. Such a great band. People don't hear it anymore. You know, their biggest claim to fame is they did a split 7-inch with Discount. So some people are aware of them because of that. They also did a split 7-inch with John Cougar Concentration Camp, who I don't know if people really remember that band, but they were kind of a bigger band in the 90s. So I think people know them a bit, but they just never really did much more after those records. So there's not a whole lot out there by them. But man, the songs that are out there, those are good songs.
So on the list you gave me, this was my favorite thing that I was already not familiar with. So I loved this one. And this was also the one where I was just like, man, they don't have an LP at all. Like, I was just like, of all the bands to not have an LP on your list, like, this one was my favorite. I listened to the 2 7-inches. I did Hiding and I did Girl. I didn't listen to the split songs, but those, you're right, those will be where people would have maybe seen the name Cigaretteman if they're super into Discount or John Cougar Concentration Camp. Funnily, there is a podcast I listen to called You Don't Even Like This Band, and they do seasons where they cover an artist, and they're currently going through the John Mellencamp season, and so they're going through that. But one of the co-hosts, he comes from punk, he knows punk stuff really well, and he's name dropped John Cougar Concentration Camp on every episode they've done of it, just because it's just so funny. So yeah, that is one that like maybe people are familiar with and be like, oh, I kind of remember that split at one point, but yeah. I listened to that one comp, A Piece of Music is Worth 1,000 Words. All that stuff was on YouTube. Fortunately, they're all in like single file YouTube, you know, where you could just put like the whole 7-inch on there. What is it? That Sweet Baby Jesus account that is like doing the Lord's work of uploading every 7-inch that possibly was made in the like 80s and 90s that don't have major distribution still. I love this. This does the thing I want out of Japanese, punk especially. Like it's like I've heard that kind of music kind of called like dirt pop, where it's just like, it's super poppy, but it's really like low.
You talking to Servo? Is that what's going on?
I think of like Cigarette Camp and like the, that kind of scene when I think of that kind of thing, but, maybe not as rough around the edges. Cigaretteman's not as rough around the edges as that stuff, but yeah, it's just, the Discount is a good connection because it kind of gives you an idea of where they're coming from sonically. But yeah, I just adored this. Like the melodies, these are scrappy. They're kind of lo-fi, but like not super lo-fi, like tough to listen to or anything like that. But mainly because it's like vinyl rips too. That's usually what you're listening to when you're on YouTube streaming it. But yeah.
So the song that I hope you're able to cut into here at some point is a song called Sister. And that was on a compilation album. The Japanese version on Snuffy Smile was called Ultimate Slow Beats. But there was a US version of it on Broken Records called Peace and Love. So again, that was out in America, so you may be able to find that CD kind of floating around in like the Discogs used bin of the world.
Yeah.
But that song Sister, woo, woo. The fact that song is relegated to just being on a compilation album and doesn't exist really anywhere else, it's criminal. It's criminal, I tell you.
Yeah, when you sent me a list of specific songs, and so when I was deciding which records to listen to from the artist, I tried to pick the ones that had at least the song that you mentioned, so that I could get kind of the full context of it. That was the one where I was just like, "It's not on a record, huh? This is a comp song. Okay, weird." I think I got to listen to it, but yeah, that's my favorite thing that you sent me, and it's right up my alley. Like I'm right in there with that same kind of stuff as you.
Oh, man, anyone who listens to that, please consider that a gateway drug into the Snuffy Smile, Water Slide, Japanese punk rock world. Like there's this scene, and again, Snuff and Leatherface, they're the great granddaddies of that scene too. Those are the bands that really kind of inspired that scene to kind of exist in a way. There's so much good stuff out there. So much good stuff. Again, I could come on and do 7 episodes about Japanese punk rock, like without even doing any research whatsoever. Like it's some of the best music in the world.
And there's so much different kinds of stuff out there too.
Yeah.
You go back to Gauze and like the Japanese early stuff with like the Stalin and that kind of like rough, early Japanese hardcore. And then there's the Burning Wind stuff. And then there's this kind of stuff. And you get into that more like slick produced, like Asian Kung Fu Generation type stuff. And just keeps going. Like currently there's a really strong, like twinkly emo wave that's happening in Japan right now that I love because they do it so much better than even the US ever did that kind of stuff.
Falls. Check out the band Falls if you like that sort of stuff.
Yeah. I love the band Sedai. That's the one that was my gateway to those bands. They have one LP and like a bunch of EPs. And honestly, I think the EPs are better than the LPs.
The one last thing, like as we wrap this topic up, the one last thing I will say about Japanese punk, Snuffy Smile in particular, is Snuffy Smile made these like stickers, and I think they might have made shirts after a while too. And these stickers on them said, "You have your punk, I have mine." And man, is that one of those things that just hits home for me, because when I talk about this kind of stuff, when I talk about, the broccoli scene, in the 90s, when you talked about those sort of things, again, very early internet to like not really internet existing a whole lot yet. Like you might as well have been talking about bands from Mars when you tried to talk about those sort of bands in America. And I always just sort of felt like that's like, okay, well, they have their punk. I have mine. This is my punk. Cigaretteman, this is my punk. Broccoli, this is my punk. Do-Rag, this is my punk. It's definitely not your punk. No, that's my punk.
But the rest of the stuff, yeah. That kind of reminds me, too, of... I saw Off With Their Heads one time, and they played with the Arrivals, and Patty from D4 is in that band. And he's, like, super into this kind of stuff. But it was funny because they were like, "Where's Patty? We want Patty to come up and sing a song with us." And then Ryan from Off With Their Heads was like, he's probably outside talking about some obscure Japanese 7-inch that nobody's ever heard of. It's like, yeah, I mean, because it's so fucking cool. And you can be a witness for that kind of thing. You can be like, oh, this is amazing. You don't know about it? Here, listen to this. You'll love it. So
You probably are going to end up having to cut this out, so I apologize because I'm going to take us off topic. But one of the funniest things that ever happened was I got to see Dillinger 4 play 1.5 songs at CBGB's when both of their guitar amps blew, and none of the other 17 bands that were playing there would loan them equipment so they could finish the set. So then we all just went outside and just kind of kicked the curb for a little bit, being upset like that. And then we all, like, again, Dillinger 4 and all of us, we ended up going to a diner in Jersey City and just kind of hanging out there all night. But yeah, watching their equipment completely shit the bed in CBGBs and only getting through 1.5 songs, they still tell stories about that sometimes from time to time. And like, I was one of like the 15 people that were there that actually saw that happen.
And it is funny too, the idea of nobody else wanting to share their gear, because they're like, they're going to blow mine up too. I'm not letting them
and
use
again,
it.
this is CBGBs in the 90s. There was like 40 bands playing that night. There were tons of guitar amps they could have borrowed.
Yeah. It's like, Patty's going to fuck mine up.
No, his was fine. It was
That's
the
true.
two
He's the
guitar
bass.
amps that blew, I'm pretty sure. That was a long time ago. That was probably 96, 97, maybe 97. I don't remember. But anyway, again, you're probably going to have to cut that out. That was hysterical.
All right, I guess we should move on to our final entry here.
This is the last one, and this is the one that I added. It's ridiculous because I consider this like the modern record on the list. But this modern record on the list is from 2007. So
Yeah.
it's not like it's like ultra modern, but it's a band called Statues.
See the cop in the yellow jacket in the street directing traffic. Pass on the information. Oh, officer, please. See the patients as they rush the buildings. Rush to jump this mouthful of feelings. It's an occupation. Oh, what can I say? Count change in the checkout lanes. 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 And we're living in lines. And we're standing in queues. And we're living in lines. And we're standing in queues. And we're living in lines. And we're standing in queues. And we're living in lines. And we're standing in queues.
And their album, New People Make Us Nervous, I don't want to say that they saved my interest in music, but boy, oh boy, were they a big part of it. So in 2007 is when I finally left the music industry and I took a straight job, and I was so burnt out. You know the phrase like, if you do what you love for a living, you'll never work a day in your life. Well, the inverse of that is if you do what you love for a living, you never stop working. And I got so burnt out going to shows, dealing with bands, having music just be like a 24/7 active concern. Like, it wasn't fun anymore. Like I met my wife in the music industry, and she really never completely recovered from that in a way where she kind of just was like, I think I'm good with music. I think I have enough. And that came really close to happening to me too. But one of the guys who I used to talk to at a college radio station called CJLO, his name is Omar, super awesome guy. He knew I liked Bum. So, CJLO is based in Montreal. So whenever I had it, like, since I knew I had a like-minded soul, I would always talk about like the Canadian bands that I like, Bum, Doughboys, like that kind of stuff. And he said, "Hey, I know you like Bum. I think you should check out this band Statues. I think you might dig that." And that record just killed me. The song Living in Lines, at the very beginning of that song, it's like, see the bug in the yellow jacket, and someone goes, woo, in the background, just destroys me every single time. Like, I can't get over it's just so perfect. Like, how do you do something that perfect? My brain cannot comprehend the genius it takes to do something that perfect. And like the whole record is like that. It hit at a time where I was really, really grumpy about music, and it reminded me just how much I love this stuff. And, you know, not for nothing, I could really use another record like this right about now. Like I haven't had something like just totally kick me in the face like this in a really, really long time. But this record, like in addition to this band, I don't think being super well known, I don't think people, you know, again, a certain scene knows them, but not everybody knows them. But this record is just so good. You know, they have other records, and their other records are also good, but New People Make Us Nervous, God, that record just killed. And that's one of those records that I turned Alan onto that he's just been listening to nonstop ever since then as well. That's kind of one of those like, you know, when I left you, I was but the learner. Now I am the master kind of moments. Yeah. Not at all. But like, that's one of those bands that just sort of signified like, oh, hey, look at this. Cause he was starting to kind of fall out of it a little bit at that point. But, yeah, just love that stupid record.
Yeah. This one was one that was a surprise to me because it was a name that I was like, I don't know this name at all. It's just generic enough of a name that there's probably 50 bands called Statues out there. Yeah. So I was like, I'm hoping that I can find this one. Fortunately, they do seem to be the highest priority or the most well-known band with this name. So thankfully, they weren't that hard to dig through because the record that you were mentioning specifically there, New People Make Us Nervous, that was the first one I found right away. And so I listened to that one first. And then I did listen to Holiday Cops, which was their 2010 record. They did after that too. I listened to that one today too. Adored both those records. They're really tight records in the sense that like there's no fat on them. Like they're not very long.
All killer.
They don't pad it out. It's like, are they sub 30-minute records? Like they're probably like 25?
I think so. Holiday Cops is for sure.
Yeah.
Depending on what version of New People Make Us Nervous you're listening to, like the CD has 5 more songs on it than the vinyl does because those songs were pulled from like a 7-inch, and I don't remember where the 5th one's from, but anyway, there's more songs on the CD than there are on the vinyl. But that's one of those bands where I went nuts. Like the record collector in me went absolutely crazy. I think I have like 9 copies of that LP, like 9 different versions of that record and the CD. And I might even have it on tape for all I know. Like I just went nuts because I love that record so much.
Yeah, they were on Deranged Records, which is a label that I am familiar with. I do know that one.
Well, the second record was on Deranged Records. The Holiday Cops was on Deranged Records. New People Make Us Nervous was on Modern Something Records. I can't remember. P-Trash is the label that put out their vinyl in Europe, which is where I got all of their stuff. But the CD came out, I believe it was an American label or a Canadian label called is Modern Something. I don't remember it off the top of my head. But
I see Pelato Records, Shooting at Decoys, Radio 81, P-Trash. Yeah, I don't see a modern one. Doesn't mean they didn't do it. It's just...
Yeah, I'm not going to go run and get it because, you know, that just creates more dead air that you'll have to edit. I don't want to make you do that extra work. But anyway, just... God, killer record. I'm sorry, but I interrupted.
But yeah, I just had a ton of fun with this record. New People Make Us Nervous. It is the stronger of the two. I agree with you. It was a really fun record. This is one too that I kind of had a hard time of even trying to describe what it is. It's poppy, but it's not really pop punk. It's got an edge to it, but it's not really hardcore.
It's got a jangle to it, like Gentleman Jesse, but like the songs are all like twice as fast as any Gentleman Jesse type songs. You know, there's definitely a power pop sort of thing going on there, but it's got enough punk teeth to it, I think, that it really, really stands out. And again, I'm going to use that word again, just hooks. Oh man, those hooks.
Yeah, I had so much fun listening to this one. I think there was the song, Living in Lines was the song that you specifically pointed out to listen to. And I was listening for that one. I was like, this is so, so good. I'd say this one probably counts as obscure as far as like, I don't know too many other people I've heard talk about it. So, this might be next to the Cigaretteman might be the one that I like really connected with the most too. I just had so much fun with that first record. And what I like is when an artist puts something out and I can't just immediately give a 1-to-1 comparison. Yeah. You know, they put something out and you're like, it's like 7 different things I like at once. And they're all disparate and different kind of things too. So yeah, it's another tough one. It's kind of hard to explain, but
the other thing that I want, like you used the word tight before, and I think that's a super accurate description. And I'm going to use another adjective that I don't in any way I'm not referring to the production values at all, but this record, it's slick. It's just real slick. The way the songs flow one into the other, it's real cohesive. It's just like, you just listen to it and you're just like, man, these dudes know what they're doing. Like this record is impeccably assembled.
yeah, I say this on the show all the time, but the sequencing is crucial on this record, and it's put together in such a perfect flow.
And again, the crazy thing is, to me, is like 5 of the songs weren't even part of the record, but yet they just still fit on there so seamlessly.
I think that is just their songwriting. It's just that good together. Like, you could shuffle the songs and they would probably work just as well together. And it wasn't a record that, when I say like it felt like one piece of music, it didn't feel like, when I say that, I don't mean it as like it just feels like the same thing over and over again. It feels like different movements almost. Like, it's just the songs are just close enough together too. There's not a lot of gap between the songs too, so it's like they almost flow into each other. Not every single song, but like it just moves perfectly. And
and lyrically, it's so interesting and so all over the place. Like, one of the songs is about like getting a call from like a telemarketer, and like where they's like taking the viewpoint of the telemarketer at one point. And there's songs about, just standing in line and stuff like that. Like, it takes a certain talent to write a song from the vantage point of a telemarketer song and then have that song completely rule.
The thing is, like, you can imagine like a 90s pop punk band maybe writing a song about a telemarketer, but it's like super trite and played out examples. And like, how there were all those punk bands that had songs about TV in like the 90s, and it's like nobody's saying anything new there. So it is a special talent to be able to take mundanity and turn it into
it's
song.
Not a joke song at all. And it's not a serious song either. It's just like, oh, this is just a song about this thing. And guess what? They just nailed it. Completely nailed it.
Well, that was your last pick, and
well, that was the last one that you let me have, because like I have a list of about like 70 other bands that like I was debating about trying to figure out a way to get more on. And like, we haven't even talked about any hip hop at all.
Right.
And like, I could do obscure hip hop. I could do my favorite all time hip hop. Like, there's like the fact that I did not get to represent any hip hop stuff when it was such a gigantic influence on me. Like, I feel a little bad about it, but since the word punk is in the title of your podcast, I figure, okay, we'll go there. And then, maybe if I don't suck the air out of the room, I can come back on some other time and do something else with some of that stuff.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. I know you did mention the rap stuff that you wanted to talk about, and I do hate that that's not in here, but it just means we have another opportunity to talk rap, though. So that is definitely.
It sounds like
okay.
I'm on board for like 9 different shows. Like, I'm coming on to talk about Bum. We're going to do some Japanese ones. We're going to do some hip hop ones. We haven't gotten into like my top records of all time, although, we talk about Broccoli and that would be in there. So,
Yeah.
Apparently this is a recurring feature now. I didn't remember signing up for this, and I expect to be well paid.
Oh, your paperwork will be in the mail. I don't know about payment. I'm not getting paid very much either, so we'll see how that goes. But
I'm not in this for your revolution, and I'm not in this for you, princess. I'm in it for the money.
Yeah, I feel like, before we hit record, I told you
we haven't hit record yet?
I told you that the last one only took about an hour, and we are coming up on 2 hours now, which is
because I don't shut up. So I apologize for that.
I think we have that. We just have that gab ability. We could just get in there and just start talking about stuff. So I thoroughly enjoyed this, and this whole list of stuff you gave me. Like, even if I didn't love everything, I found everything interesting. So this list is great. I love this stuff. I think you've successfully nailed the task. And I kind of want to see that list of 70 more albums that you had lined up, because I might need to do some homework on some of that stuff.
Yeah, I aim to be a tough act to follow. Like, hopefully the other people do a much worse job of this than me, because it will make me feel better about myself. But yeah, no, I'm happy to come talk about music whenever you'd like me to.
Yeah, this is a blast. I really appreciate it. This was a treat. I really enjoyed this. And I got to spend a lot of time with this stuff. I had a decent enough lead time that I could listen to several releases from these people. So, yeah, very excited to find out more from this stuff. So, I appreciate it.
Not a problem. But before we wrap up, I just want to if anyone who made it this far, bless you for dealing with this. But check out these bands. Like, to me, that's actually the most important thing. Dig more for these bands. These bands are all gateway drugs to amazing scenes and amazing things from a purely non-selfish level. Just like, go check out this stuff. Go check out labels like Snuffy Smile, like Waterslide, like Brassneck. Like, these are the people that are they're doing the real work. Again, I said earlier, I don't think I'm an interesting person. I just stand next to interesting people. They're the interesting people. Like, go check out their stuff. When you're done with that, if you want to throw some dollars at PopKid, I'm not going to be upset. I've got a bunch of LPs that I would love to put other things in that cabinet. That would be delightful. If you want to come listen to Alan and I talk about nonsense on YouTube while having to look at my stupid face, hey, that's an option too. Our show's called Perfectly Excellent. That's the channel on YouTube. We also technically have that as handles on Instagram and Blue Sky, but we don't necessarily post there as much as we probably should. My website is ibuywaytooManyRecords.com. I usually post reviews on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Wednesday is always Ed Lover Dance Day, so I always do the hip hop record on Wednesday. And I'm on most social media things as @Tim PopKid. Though, to be honest with you, the one that I really post to is Blue Sky. I'm not on Twitter at all, but the one I post to the most is on Blue Sky. The other ones is what I tend to just sort of shoot links out through. So if you want inane rambling, go to Blue Sky. If you want specific rambling, you can follow me on some of the other things as well. If you need any more of this after this long ass episode, which I hope you're probably going to cut down to be 10 minutes long.
No, we're going to leave it all in. We're leaving it all in.
I could get litigious at the drop of a hat.
I could tell you worked in radio because you did a seamless plug of all your links and social media and all that kind of stuff without me having to even set you up for it. So that is perfect. I appreciate you for doing this. This was so much fun. Definitely will be hitting you up to have you on again in the future. Yeah, just a great time. So I appreciate it. Everyone, all the links are in the show notes. You can check it out. And we'll wrap it up here. And we'll talk to you all next time.
Drive fast. Take chances.
To order Forever Young by credit card or COD, call now